I will now talk you through how to make a strong grant application. In terms of criteria, there are some general guidelines you should follow that are applied across all of our grant schemes. First, you should ensure that your project serves an identified need. Be careful to include clear, detailed and realistic costs and timelines. Explain how you will work and engage with the target community. Where possible, demonstrate a commitment to working in partnership with other organisations. Ensure that the proposed work is not internal to the organisation but has a wider community reach. Demonstrate the potential for wider impact within the sector. And finally, aim to create a model of working that will provide learning opportunities for other groups. Before submitting your application, please note that multiple applications from the same organisation to the same scheme are usually not eligible. Organisations may be required to submit their most recent audited accounts or financial statements for our records. Applicants should have an organisational bank account. The Community Foundation will only pay grants via bank transfer to the applicant organisation's account. Finally, we recommend that our grantees sign up to the Governance Code for Charities, a link to which can be found below. At this stage, you may already be familiar with our online application process. This was developed last year, and now all grant applications to the Community Foundation must be submitted through our online application system. I will now talk you through a standard application form question by question. Question 1. Organisation description. Here we are looking for a brief paragraph explaining the vision and core work of your organisation. Your challenge here is to ensure that the reader can plainly understand what you do by using clear and concise language. Question 2. Project description summary. An ideal response to this question will summarise your project in approximately 2 to 3 lines. By reading this, we should know exactly what you plan to do if funded. Question 3. Project description detailed. Now that you have summarised what you plan to do, we would like you to tell us briefly how you plan to do it. Question 4. What is the need and how is it identified? As you likely work directly or closely with your target group, the need for your project probably seems glaringly obvious to you. Please be aware, however, that assessors may not be as acutely aware of the issues affecting your beneficiaries. And in this section, please explain that need to us and let us know how it arose or came to your attention. Question 5. How were the beneficiaries identified? As with the previous question, please explain to us how you identified your target group. If you plan to work with beneficiaries outside of your usual client group, please explain how you plan to engage these external participants in the project. Question 6. How were the beneficiaries disadvantaged? It is not always clear from proposals we receive that the intended beneficiaries of the project are disadvantaged. For example, a literacy programme for children may not necessarily be a priority for us to fund, but a literacy programme for socially or economically deprived children might be. Question 7. What are the projected benefits or outcomes? In response to this question, tell us what will be better as a result of your project and what positive changes will have been made. Question 8. How will these outcomes be measured? Here we would like to see how you will evaluate the outcome of the project once it has been completed. Question 9. What happens after funding ends? In some cases, after an initial grant from the Community Foundation, a project may gain momentum and become self-sustaining. In other cases, your plan may be to run a strong and impactful once-off project. Unless stated in the criteria for the scheme, either answer is perfectly eligible. Question 10. Working with other local organisations. The Community Foundation encourages collaboration, networking and ideas sharing among community groups. Where relevant and where possible, demonstrate how you plan to work with other local organisations over the course of your project. I will now look more closely at a section that many applicants find tricky: the budget. Within this section, there are some key things to look out for. Number 1, be careful what you ask for. Often we receive very strong proposals for very worthwhile projects, but when our assessors examine the budget more closely, the costs listed are not direct project costs. Number 2, be honest and realistic. Take time to research your project costs. Where relevant, seek out multiple quotes. Where costs appear too high or too low, the assessors will get the impression that the budget is unrealistic and ill-conceived. Number 3, mind the gap. If your project will cost €10,000 and you are requesting a grant of €7,500, you will need to clearly demonstrate how this gap will be filled. In the case where there is a large and obvious shortfall, assessors will have concerns around the organisation's capacity to deliver on a reduced budget. Number 4, core costs. This is important as the Community Foundation will not fund the core running costs of an applicant organisation. These include day-to-day costs such as rent, light, heat and staffing expenses. If you are unclear whether or not the costs you are applying for are eligible, please contact a member of our team for advice. I have spoken a little about our online assessment process, but what exactly happens to your application once it's been submitted online? The first stage is an initial screening by our grants team. Here we identify any applications that obviously do not fit the criteria of the scheme and are therefore ineligible. An example of an application that might be removed at this stage would be one that has come from a profit-making organisation. Once an application has passed this initial screening, it will then go before our internal review panel. At this stage, proposals may be eliminated based on the fact that they do not align with the scheme's priorities and/or criteria. A long list will be drawn up based on this internal review process and will be sent to our expert grants panel. This panel is made up of external experts who have amassed decades of experience in the community, voluntary and non-profit sectors. This group will select the strongest applications from the long list and propose them for funding. Once this shortlist has been drawn up, it is forwarded to the Community Foundation's board for approval and ratification. Throughout this rigorous process, your application is carefully and thoroughly considered. Things that all assessors look out for include the following. They want to ensure that the applicant is a not-for-profit organisation that falls within the organisational income limit of the scheme where applicable. They want to see a clear, measurable and demonstrable need for your project. The application must not be for ongoing work or core costs. They look for a clear breakdown of project activities and projected outcomes, as well as realistic and detailed timelines and costings. They look favourably on applicants who, where possible, demonstrate a commitment to working or collaborating with other community groups or charities to share ideas and pool resources. Here are some common mistakes that applicants make when submitting their proposals. Be careful to take your time, read the grant criteria carefully and ensure that you have included all relevant information. After spending time, resources and effort developing your proposal, you do not want your project to be eliminated due to small errors. It is therefore important that you reread your application before submission and, if possible, have a colleague read through it for you too. Ideally, if you have followed all of these steps, you will have submitted an application that is worthy of funding. If this happens, however, there are a number of things to keep in mind. Over the course of the grant cycle, which is usually 1 year, you will be required to attend 2 learning network events. The first will happen close to the beginning of your project, and you will be introduced to other grantees who are likely to be carrying out similar work with similar beneficiary groups. Toward the end of your project, you will attend a second session with this group, where you can share knowledge, experiences and learnings. Over the next year, the Community Foundation will undertake a small number of site visits with selected grantees. At these visits, we get a first-hand look at the work of those organisations and the positive impact CFI funding has made to that work. In terms of reporting then, you will also be required to develop a project plan in the early stages of your work. This should act as a guide for you throughout the life cycle of the grant and help you to establish key performance indicators against which to measure your progress and outcomes. We will also ask you to submit an interim or monitoring report approximately midway through your project, with an update in relation to progress made, challenges encountered, and any setbacks the project may have come up against. At the end of the project, you will be required to submit an outcome report containing actual costings, reported challenges, and the highlights and outcomes of your project. For full details of all our grant schemes, please visit www.communityfoundation.ie. If you have any queries in relation to the content of this presentation or any aspect of our grant making, please don't hesitate to contact a member of the grants team for help. Thank you.